I thought I was cool with corporate Greg, but apparently I have wronged him in some way.
Well, he's testing your commitment.
Maybe that's what it is.
He's trying to see how much of this you can take before. Now, who are you?
I was actually going to come in and introduce myself because we haven't met.
I don't know this person. Who are you?
Brian as well.
Oh,
so great name, by the way.
Hi, Brian. Nice to meet
That's
you.
going to make it
It's been a while
easy.
since you've been. Right, it's going to make it a little easier.
That'll make it easy.
All right. So as you can tell, I know everyone, and I've just met Marcus about an
hour ago.
I
Right?
met Brian like
Right now.
7 seconds ago. So this is going to be good. Lots to cover. We got the NBA schedule release, which is always a big thing, and all of that.
We'll make sure to read the right season schedule too.
Yeah,
Here,
that's because we're professionals. The Dodgers won again.
Yep.
7-1. They are now 14-1 in August. They've won 10 in a row. I never got to the point where I was worried about the Dodgers because I just don't do that. Like I feel like this is what happens every year, no matter what roster they put together.
The thing about being a Dodger fan or following the Dodgers, at least for the last decade, is that you pretty much spend your whole summer waiting for October. Because you know on paper they are the best team in the National League West. They are one of the best teams in the entire National League. And the playoffs have been, I mean, you hate to take it for granted, but they really have been a given over the last decade or so. And so you look at what's happening in August and you're sort of like, all right, that's cool. What happens when they get to the playoffs? You know, how do they figure out their pitching rotation? Who is going to go into a massive slump that you didn't expect in the postseason? And so, this is great. It's nice, but I don't know that if you're a Dodger fan, you're getting too high or too low because we've seen this movie before.
No, I don't think they're getting too high, but the too low part is.
That always happens.
Brian, you're wearing a Dodgers jersey. Because I have a rule.
Okay.
I do not. Unless it's like I need to do it every day for work or whatever, and I don't have to do that anymore. Like I don't look at the baseball standings until like the end of June because nothing doesn't matter. Nothing in there is important. And then I'll start following along a little bit. July, we get into August, and I saw people on social media, you see it on Twitter, whatever. People are freaking out the first month and a half of the season, and so I was like, oh my god, this must be terrible. And I look it up, and they're like 12-10. I expected them to be like 9 games under 500. They've lost 8 in a row. It's like they're 12-10. And then you look up again in like another month and a half, and they're like 14 games over 500.
Yeah.
And then they're like 25 games over. It's like, what are we stressing out?
I think people forget how long a baseball season is. That first month of April, it sucks if your team doesn't get off to a good start. And you do start to think the sky is falling. But you also look at the talent on that roster and the fact that over the course of 5-6 months, here's the beauty. I know people say a baseball season is too long, 162 games. I love it. I think it's great because I think what happens is the cream rises to the top eventually. Over the course of 162 games, the best teams will show themselves. And so even if you get off to a poor start, you've got plenty of time to turn it around. But I think everybody's like, the Dodgers are great. They're competing for a World Series. Why are we looking up at the Diamondbacks after 2 weeks? What's going on?
It's a bit, and then, I check back in, and you sound like somebody who follows a little more closely than I do. And I'm like, well, wait a minute here. Okay, well, they're struggling a tiny bit here, but no one, you look at a box score and I don't know who any of these people are because none of them are the people who are supposed to be in the lineup.
Right.
Everyone is injured.
Right.
Every pitcher they have is injured. You know what happened now? They're not injured anymore. Clayton Kershaw's back. Urias is back.
Yep.
Gonsolin is starting to pitch a little bit better. And you talk about October. I don't know if these guys are ready for thought last year they were really good.
Right.
Every year it's the same. Baseball is a total crapshoot in the playoffs. Nothing really matters.
Get to the dance, and then who knows what happens.
If you're within 20% of another team, give or take, that's close enough. It's a coin flip.
Right.
So,
and on the flip side, while the Dodgers have been hot, the Braves, they're not terrible, but they're not. They were red hot for a while, and they've slowed down a little bit. So you have ebbs and flows over the course of the season. And I think in a lot of ways, I think if you looked at it, this was supposed to be more of a rebuilding year, right? They had shed a lot of their talent. They were going to bring in some new guys. They were, I think, trying to save some money to maybe, eventually go after, say, a Shohei Ohtani or somebody like that. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year. Even in a rebuilding year, they are head and shoulders above everybody else in the National League West and are still very much a contender to get to the World Series, depending on what happens in the playoffs. I mean, so Dodger fans enjoy this, man, because even when it's not great, it's still pretty great.
And this is what they do. This is why I love it. This is why I love the Dodgers and their management. I just, I hear people complaining about Andrew Friedman at the deadline. He owes the Dodgers fans an apology, and Bill Plaschke's all up in a lather and all these things. It's like, first of all, stop. You can't bet the house every year. You just can't. Like you can't run an organization that way because you run out of stuff. You can't maintain consistency and all that. But and then I see like, okay, they went and got Lance Lynn, who was like the worst starter in baseball, and they made some moves, and it's like, they are so good. They're like the Spurs back when the Spurs were excellent. They're the Heat now. They take every player they get. They can find the two things that they're good at, the three best ways to deploy them, or whatever it is, and just have them do that. And they turn trash into good players.
I have a friend who's a Mets fan, and they have their own set of miseries right now. But when the Dodgers traded for Lance Lynn, I was kind of like, we'll see what happens. And he says to me, he's like, I added for Lance Lynn on my fantasy baseball team because the Dodgers will find a way to make him good. And at least through the first few starts, that seems to be the case. That ERA's come down from like 7 to about 5.5 or something like that.
He is actually starting tonight against the Brewers. It is Lance Lynn, 5.88 ERA, 9-9.
But he was like well over 6, I think, when he showed up.
It was like 12.5 when they traded for him. It's just like the opposite of that is, if I'm another team, I'm highly suspicious of players that have been with the Dodgers because I'm like, well, wait a minute, can we do that? It's like signing. Like, I'm a little worried about Gabe Vincent with the Lakers. It's like, I don't know if we can make that happen.
Do that happen.
And so the Dodgers are the same kind of way. And does Kike play like this in the playoffs? I don't know, but it's, you add a little injection of excitement into that 162 games, and if Urias and Kershaw are healthy, I think they can win in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's enough starting pitching to get you through the first couple games, and you make it up for the third and fourth games if you have to, and whatever. And if Freddie Freeman hits like he is, and Betts and Will Smith hit, like, yeah, of course they can win.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Is you need your hitters to actually show up and hit, and you need your starting pitching. I feel like this is where I understand limiting guys and not going third time through the lineup, but I also think you sort of do them a disservice because I think what you saw last year and against the Padres is by the third game and certainly by the fourth game, the Padres had seen everybody in that bullpen multiple times, and they knew what was coming. And I think if you can somehow limit your bullpen exposure, I think in those series, especially in a shorter series, I think you end up sort of working out better. But, I know that's not how they operate.
Right. And in fairness, like if you're looking for, I think, points of attack, like some, at least for me, I'd worry about like Kershaw can't.
He cannot.
He can't go through the lineup through.
So that's a game. There. That's a game you're going to have to use the bullpen.
Right. Urias, I don't know. Maybe by the playoffs he's built back up again. A little bit. Maybe he could give you. But like they don't have that. That is the one thing I would say is like there's nobody you look at and say this guy I think can give us 7 if we want to push him through that lineup a third time, so that when we get to the bullpen game, it's not the same 3 guys to your point, Marcus, that have already pitched 6 innings in the first 2 or 3 games.
This is how we know we're old, because you're like, can somebody give us 7? Like, that used to be a given once upon a time. Right?
Oh, I saw it was some crazy number of like complete games from Nolan Ryan, and it was like if you added up like Verlander, like the 10 best pitchers of this generation, and Nolan Ryan's complete game. I'll look it up on Baseball Reference, like how many in the break, but it's just it is a very different game.
Absolutely, 100%.
So I mean, other than the Braves, is there anyone else?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, this really feels like, unless things go sideways, we are headed towards a Dodger-Brave NLCS.
Is there anyone that can beat the Braves on the way, Brian, so we don't have to see them? Because that's the best thing that's happened so far with this, this 14-1 August is they've put themselves on the opposite side of the bracket. Right.
Yeah. I think they're only like 4 or 5 games behind the Braves right now,
Let's
too.
Get greedy
They have a chance to catch them and pass.
So, like, who else are we relying on to knock the Braves out?
I don't see anybody like the Brewers.
Right. I don't think.
Yes.
I think Marcus said it right. I think it's gonna all roads are leading to Braves, Dodgers.
Barring an implosion by one side or the other, that's what we're looking at in the NLCS this year.
I mean, one of the questions, and we'll talk a little bit about this after the break, I guess, but like one of that people asked, I heard them talking about it yesterday. Funchy's got it on the rundown. Like, is this sort of failed season concept?
Only because we live in rings culture now, and like it extends beyond the NBA to like every sport. Where if you didn't win a ring, then what are you doing here? But the fact that the Dodgers have been so good for so long and continually make the playoffs and have been in a number of World Series, that's hard, man.
They'd be better off, honestly, with this, like the perception that they don't completely, like if they only made the playoffs every third year.
Yeah,
we penalized them for being this good,
and not winning a title. I mean, I fell victim to it. I remember a few years ago saying they look like the Braves of the 90s, right? That won the NL East, 8 years in a row or something like that, and got one World Series out of it.
Right, as if being the Braves of the 90s is a bad
thing, right? Like, I mean, they were great.
Totally.
They were a great team, but they only got one World Series, and that's like the anchor that hangs around their necks. And I really did fall victim to that with the Dodgers a few years ago.
All right, so the 2 o'clock call of the day, we've got Marcus Grant here, so we'll focus that on fantasy because that's one of your specialties.
That's the main gig. Yeah.
I mean, I want to put you in a box.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, you're more than that.
Thank
you. To me.
Thank you, Brian.
So we got that coming up at 2. We'll spin the wheel of questions in about 10 minutes. Plenty to cover. Marcus Grant, Brian Kamenetsky in for Mason Island 7.